Alright, in this video we're going to break down the most important modern guitar techniques in detail, all of them just in this video. So if there's one video that you're looking to watch to master all modern techniques, it's going to be this one. Now let's get straight into it and let's start with hybrid picking. This is easily one of my favorite techniques. As you heard from the intro, I've used it extensively, and so what we're going to look at is a few ways to get you started and what are the most important things to learn when it comes to hybrid picking. In the link in the description, you'll find the tabs to follow along completely for free. They're all in the free Modern Guitar Toolkit. You can download that from the description. There's plenty of exercises, tabs, licks and everything. And there's also the transcriptions that we're going to use, the exercises that we're going to use in this video. So definitely recommend you check it out. Again, completely free to download. All right, let's start with hybrid picking. So what is hybrid picking? Well, it's basically when you use the pick and your fingers with your right hand at the same time. So there's a few advantages, obviously, with this technique. And the biggest one is the fact that you're going to have, let's say you have a pattern on multiple strings. You're going to have one finger of your right hand ready on each string, right? So if I have something like a minor 7 arpeggio like this, instead of having to move the pick, through different strings, what you can do is you can just use one individual articulation, one individual finger or your pick on each string. And obviously this makes the line a lot easier to play because, you don't have to shift and move through different strings. And so if you're new to this technique, something like a minor 7 arpeggio on 3 strings could be quite difficult. So we're going to start with what is here the first exercise, basically, for hybrid picking that you'll find in the tabs. And it's basically a pattern that is developed just on 2 strings. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use the pick on the lower string and then the middle finger on the higher string. And in this case, we're using the A minor pentatonic scale. So I'm here on A on the D string. And so I'm going to pick that note on the D string. I'm going to then hammer on the next note on the following string. Right? So that I just have to pick once. And then on the following string, I'm going to just pluck with my middle finger. So I'm plucking the G string with my middle finger, right? And then hammer on to the next note. So pick, hammer on, pluck, hammer on. And then we finish basically this whole pattern with just a hammer from nowhere back on the D string. And if you you're looking over there, it's just because I have my giant monitor here, so it's just to make sure everything is in frame. But basically, yeah, just hammer from nowhere, this 10 on the D string. And that's the whole pattern. Now, another cool thing here is that this is a group of 5. And this is another thing that happens a lot in progressive music, like modern styles of guitar playing in general. There's a lot of odd groupings a lot of times when you hear these players, use these lines. And this is a good example of that. So group of 5, meaning that we're still playing 16 notes, but we're grouping them 5 at a time. Usually when you have 16 notes, you just group them 4 at a time, right? 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and and by the way, if you're not familiar with subdivisions and stuff like that, there's other videos on the channel to watch, so take a look. And so instead of grouping them this way, instead of grouping 16 notes every 4, we group them every 5, right? So we're still in 4/4, we're still playing 16 notes, so 16 notes per measure. However, we have a pattern that repeats every 5, right? It's 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's not quintuplets because we're not starting on the 1 each time. we're just offsetting the line basically by 1/16 note each time. And if you look at the tabs, it's fairly easy to see, because as you can see, these are our 5 notes, and then just repeat the same way. But as you can see, it's repeating from the middle of the bar and not at the beginning. And so the second time it actually starts on the E of the second beat, right? 1 E and A would be the 4/16 notes. So it starts on the second 16 notes of beat 2, right? And then the third time it starts on the third 16 note of beat 3. So on the end of 3. And then guess what? The fourth time is going to move 1/16 further again and start on the A, right? Of the fourth beat. So now the reason why we're starting with this is because you want to get used to using or combining pick and fingers just gradually, right? You don't want to jump into something that is too complicated if you're new to this technique, because it's going to feel overwhelming very easily. And the number one important thing that you need to keep in mind with hybrid picking is that you have to get used to using your pick in combination with your fingers, right? Make sure you practice this along with the metronome, because again, it's gonna offset by 1/16 note each time, so you wanna get used to that feel. And once that feels familiar, then you can jump onto the sevenths basically. And so in that second pattern, basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the ring finger. And so that's the new arpeggio. As you can see, still doing pick and middle finger, but now on the third string of the pattern, I'm using the ring finger to pluck it. So I go pick, middle, ring. And then of course, if you have more notes on the same strings, you can just hammer on. And then we just finish with these pull-offs to make it like a group of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's it. So just like before, it's going to offset basically every time. It's going to start within the same measure at a different time. So this also makes it a lot more interesting rhythmically, because it's not just a set group of notes, if that makes sense. It gives you the impression that it changes basically rhythmically each time. But yeah, in terms of technique, it's really just that. So you want to get used to that, alternating basically from pick to fingers. And that's pretty much it. One thing you want to definitely keep in mind with hybrid picking, you don't want to hear notes overlap together, right? So this doesn't work. Doesn't sound good. We're trying to go for the opposite. So just one note ringing at a time. Think of like a monophonic synthesizer where you have like the portamento on, and like every time you change note, you immediately have just one note ringing at a time, just one note playing, but they're all extremely tied together. It's tough to explain, but if you like try a monophonic synth, you kind of get what I mean. So basically, as soon as you move to the next note, the other notes need to go, and there needs to be no gaps in between notes. So if it doesn't sound like this, just practice this as low as you can and focus on this before moving to increasing your speed. This is extremely important. All right, this is hybrid picking in a nutshell. So Now, the important thing, once you have the licks down, the exercises down, let's say you spend like a couple of weeks on this, even a month, what you want to do is you want to implement this in a musical context, right? So you want to open up a backing track, any backing track, and you want to make sure you're able to transpose the lick if it's not in the right key. And then you want to make sure you can just throw it into the your vocabulary database of licks, and make sure you can use that while you improvise, right? So it can be any backing track, any tempo. I'll give you a few examples, I guess, how I would use it. You heard some at the beginning. I'll try to, you can change notes, right? So you can, I'll show you a couple of ways I would use this, maybe with different notes or just in different ways. So I don't know. Let's start with the group of 5. For 7. That's kind of the idea. You can obviously take these licks even further and like change the notes. I changed some the second time, like I started on the G string. Kind of use the same concept, right? Each string gets one finger, and the rest is just hammer-ons. And you know, obviously you want to be familiar with the key that you're playing in this case, E flat minor, so you want to make sure you can want to make sure you can visualize each scale shape in that key, and then you plug these licks into that and change a couple notes, and basically this should be the result. And so moving on, let's talk about economy picking. Now, this is my preferred way of picking in general. So I very rarely use alternate picking unless I really have to. And so economy picking is really just my favorite technique, or my favorite way of picking at least. And so what you want to do with economy picking is you want to prioritize maintaining the same picking motion, right? So in this case, for instance, we have this pattern, which is down, up, down, 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 up, down. And if you had more strings, it would continue that way. So we're trying to put like multiple downstrokes in a row or multiple upstrokes. And that way you have almost like a sweep picking motion where you can just glide through the strings. Like these are not necessarily different downstrokes. It's more like a micro sweep, right? Same here, like down, up, down, down. These two downstrokes, it's almost like one downstroke, right? It's not like this. It doesn't have to be like this. Like these are two different downstrokes, right? And you don't want that. You want just one continuous motion. Think of like sweep picking, right? Just one motion through the different strings. That's really, you know, economy picking in a nutshell. So for upstrokes is the same thing. You do fluid consecutive upstrokes without breaking the movement in different movements, if that makes sense. And so the pattern here is super straightforward, just down, up, down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down, down, and so on. You can see that in the tabs too. One big tip here is make sure you mute properly. So this is the key to make economy picking sound really good, in my opinion. And by the way, if you want like the best examples, the best use from like a guitar player who I think is right now the absolute best at this technique, you should check out Spiro Dusias. I don't know if that's how you pronounce your name, but I don't even know if he's on YouTube or not. But if you look him up on Instagram, Spiro, Spiro, should come up, and he is absolutely the best guitar player, the best economy picking guy at the moment in the world, I'm pretty sure. So you should definitely check him out. And one thing that he does like incredibly well is the attack. Like usually what you miss with economy picking is a little bit of attack because you're not necessarily like really digging into the strings too much. But the way that he plays economy picking with muting, basically you really emphasize the pick attack because you get rid of the sustain, right? And so if I mute, you can see here quite a lot of pick attack, right? But it comes just from the muting because you're getting rid of the sustain, right? And so you get a sharper pick attack by comparison. So that is something very important to keep in mind that helps a lot with economy picking. Apart from that, it's really just grinding, you know, with the metronome, starting slow, getting used to the picking motion, making sure you can control that. And honestly, that's pretty much it. All right, so here's a couple of ways you can use economy picking. We're going to use the same backing track, and we'll try to come up with a few lines that kind of use that one as a starting point. That's pretty cool, this one. So yeah, you get the idea. I came up with a few interesting lines. As you can see, this process of you know, putting up a backing track and then trying a few lines, you see that once you come up with a good one, you can go back and sort of extract that from the context and then work on it as a lick, right? This is one of the most powerful ways to create your own vocabulary, create your own style, because as you practice, then you start to immediately build basically different lines, but this time they're your own lines, right? So that's pretty cool. Next up, we have legato. Now, this is definitely one of my favorites and one of the most useful because it makes you play fast with less effort. So that's pretty cool. In this example here, we have just kind of the same line as before, but this time with legato. So just doing hammer-ons and pull-offs basically on this scale, right? So you do hammers and then sort of back and forth. So hammer-ons, pull-offs, and then onto the next string, onto the next string. Pretty straightforward. Now, what makes this cool, obviously, is the speed, but if you don't have the control first, you're not going to sound good when you play fast. And so if you're missing that, you really just want to go back to practicing this as low as possible. I'm talking like painfully slow. And also you want to make sure that you're able to ascend and make everything sound clean. So this is the trickiest part, the thing that I see like 90% of guitar players mess up. You want to make sure you're able to produce a clean sounding note when you do the pull-offs. So it's not just this. Like sure you're getting the note, but it doesn't sound as clean. So you want to make sure you actually get that note nice and clear. Right? So that when you speed up, you get like a very clean flow of notes, right? That's the idea. So once again, super straightforward. So it's really just about getting to work, practicing super slow, and making sure you're in control of each movement. Okay, let's look at now some legato examples. So let's see what we can come up with. So yeah, you don't have to play necessarily super fast when it comes to legato. Like you can do slower legato lines. The important thing is that you play in time. So you want to make sure you can play longer legato lines while maintaining the subdivision, while maintaining the pulse that you're playing over, right? So with legato is particularly tricky because you don't always have a match between the subdivisions and the grouping of notes on each string. Meaning that if you have, like in this case, multiple notes on each string, you have to still make sure you can keep track of which one is on the downbeat each time, right? So 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, there's no 5, but you get the idea, right? So I'm trying to feel the subdivision pulse, right? The 4/4 metronome, and then play just 16 notes independently of the amount of notes on each string. And then when you speed it up, and you play longer lines, that makes sense because everything is in the right subdivision. Even if it's not like 4 notes per string where you would have like, you know, 1 accent per string, if that makes sense, which would be easier. And so you gotta get used to not have that. All right, moving on to the juicy one, selective picking. Now, this one became quite popular in the last couple of years, thanks to this guy right here. And so obviously check out, I think there's still online the videos, like the original OG selective picking tutorials. Actually, I'm not sure if they're online now, but I'm sure there's some videos you can find, maybe masterclasses from Tosin Abasi himself explaining this. And obviously, what better way to just look at the OG, you know, when it comes to something like this. But what I learned and what I think can be helpful to you is a couple of things that I'm going to show you now. So first of all, in this lick in particular, we're doing that basically we're doing like groups of 3 where you have the hammer from nowhere and then down up with the pick. So in essence, what you want to do is you want to separate the left hand from the right hand. So the left hand is going to hammer certain things. Now we're making it easier with just this group of 3, but obviously it can get a lot more complex. And then the right hand is going to just selectively pick certain notes. Personally, I like to use hybrid picking with this, but let's just not talk about that for once in this video. And let's just focus on like the original way to do this, which is just alternate pick basically. Everything that is not a hammer on or pull off. And this is something that I don't really use, so it's not, as you can hear, it's not super fast. You can get this like incredible speeds because it's a technique that allows you to do that, but it's just something like I don't usually play it this way. So I mean, we're gonna look at this, but obviously the point is also that you make of this technique, you use it basically in your own way, right? And so that's the essence pretty much. And it's pretty much it. You just play that along with the metronome until you reach the speed basically. Once again, muting is going to be super important. Like, and also synchronization. Like you can already hear a little bit that I was starting to lose that synchronization. You wanna really make sure every note is really spaced equally as much as possible. And so these are really the main points with something like this. You can do like longer arpeggio lines, like where you just have more hammer-ons than picked notes. Very much like a brain twist, but it's pretty cool. It has, you know, so many different ways you can use this and so many different options you can go into and territories you can explore. So it's going to be one of those experimental things that you have to kind of play around a little bit with. Let's see if we can throw it into a solo. These could be a few ideas. Fairly more tricky to place into an actual solo, an actual musical context. So it's not an easy technique. It's again fairly experimental. So that also means you have more like grounds to play with and more territories you can explore, and at that point it's going to be really about your creativity. But all right, let's look at the last modern technique for today, that is thumping. And once again, a certain guy here responsible for this, but okay, here's what I've learned and what I think really makes a difference when it comes to thumping. Just like selective picking is something that you want to approach with patience. So, and I think especially thumping, like the learning curve is steep. So you're going to practice probably for months without being able to play anything with thumping. At least that's what I did. Like I went through like months and months of just like doing super slow. Stuff like that, you know, doesn't sound particularly good. And then all of a sudden, after a while, like yeah, the delay makes it messy, but all of a sudden you get that like switch where you can just play fast, right? And then it sounds cool. But you need a lot of patience for that. And here's the things that I grinded, and I can try to continuously grind when it comes to exercises for thumping. It's probably best if I turn off the delay. So first thing, obviously, the initial movement. This is the thing that I struggle with the most, to be honest. Like getting this articulation clean, getting that like note to come out clean is not that easy. Also because you want to try to make the string kind of hit the frets, so you get that like snap. So it's very tricky to get the right movement there, but that's the first thing I would work on. Once you have that, fairly easy, you just upstroke basically. And you can, you know, practice scales. And that's like the first step, right? And this is already like a couple months, to be honest. Make sure you have the hand position in the right way. You want to have sort of like a... I try to think of like having sort of like every finger on the same string, or like trying to pluck the same string with like all your fingers. So they're like, you know, in line horizontally, and then you just move your wrist basically to like access the different fingers. So it's almost like this, right? And not this. Like it doesn't start from the thumb, your movement, it starts from the wrist. At least that's what I see when I look at people like Tosin, or Josh is also really good at thumping, Joshua de la Victoria. Once you have that, basically you can start to incorporate the other fingers, right? So once again, without breaking sort of the hand positioning, you just introduce your index finger. Start very slow. I am doing this fast, but you shouldn't do that fast for at least the first 3 months, in my opinion. You want to really make sure you can sort of really emphasize the motion at the beginning. So obviously this is like very exaggerated movements, but this will help you sort of get the precision, right? Like the right movements. Obviously when you play faster, like the movements will be reduced a lot, but I think it's good to practice with sort of exaggerated movements so that you really learn like the right mechanics and you get used to that. And then, you know, you add more fingers. So a group of 4 would be down up with the thumb, and then index, middle finger. And this is like the thing that you want to, I guess, practice the most, or at least the thing that I really grinded the most, like just very slow. Like do this over and over and over for weeks until you get really familiar with the motion. Once you're there, probably in like I said, a couple months, you can start to speed up. And then also combine different groupings, right? So each one of these articulations can be grouped differently. So if you have like 2, you can then put a 3 next to it and do like a group of 5, right? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The example that you have in the tabs is from one of my recent singles, and it's just a group of 5 and then a group of 4. And on a group of 5, I'm also only accenting the thumb down notes, so everything else is muted. Yeah, I should probably go back to practice thumping a little bit more. It's not the cleanest right now, but hopefully this helps, and hopefully this gives you sort of a roadmap in terms of like what to work on. In terms of musical examples, well, like I said, I have this single of mine that I put out that, it's fairly easy. Like it's not, it's not anything like Animous's Leaders, the stuff that they do. But at the same time, I think it's something that uses the technique just for the sound, right? Like it's not super crazy rhythmically, but at the same time, it sounds pretty cool. So I'll play a little bit of it so that, just to give you an idea. So yeah, I was playing over the actual track, so there's like too many guitars going on, but again, just to give you an example of that. This started, like I said, with just playing super slow and yeah, just grinding that with the metronome. No shortcuts. So if there's a takeaway with this Modern Techniques video, is that once again, just like always, like it's always been like this with music, there's no shortcuts. So with any technique you want to learn, it really comes down to how much you're practicing, how well you're practicing, how well you're able to focus on each one of these elements, and how structured you are with your practice sessions. If you need any help with any of these things, I do have an online program that you can check out. We can just have a chat, see if it works for you. No strings attached. If you want, you can book a free call with me, one-on-one. We can kind of see if this can even be a good fit for you, and then from there look into the possible next steps. But it's something that is not for everybody, and it's honestly not even guaranteed that we can work together. But if you're interested, you can check it out. The link should be in the description, and yeah, we can just have a chat. If not, in any case, I'll see you here in the next video. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you get the tabs, right? Again, completely for free, but you can follow along better with the video, kind of rewatch it, re-go through the links and everything else. And with that said, I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.